Hello and happy Friday. Welcome to Informed Life Radio on 1150 AM KKNW and streaming to CHD TV, Rumble, and other platforms. I'm your guest host, Lisa Templeton, standing in today for Bernadette Pager. This hour of Free Speech Radio is brought to you by Informed Choice Washington, and I'd like to thank our donors for supporting free speech on the airwaves about legislation, litigation, research, rights, and more. If you find that this hour of radio is helpful, if you appreciate our efforts monitoring legislation, engaging with our lawmakers and policymakers, and educating the public, we ask that you please pledge a single or recurring donation. Even $5 or $10 a month helps us stay on the air and continue our work to educate on issues that directly impact medical freedom. We're a nonprofit on a shoestring budget, and we need you. We use every penny most prudently. And did you know you can also donate stock? Go to informedchoicewa.org and hit donate. We really appreciate your help. The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of our wonderful KKNW or CHD, and the information provided is not intended to be medical or legal advice. First, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Informed Choice Washington President Bob Runnels. Hello there.
Hi, Lisa. How's it going?
Hi, good. How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Good. Well, I'm excited to introduce you, I guess, for the first time to our wonderful guest, Liz James. I had the pleasure of meeting her on 2 occasions in the last 2 months while she was tabling for her nonprofit, Blessed by His Blood, at the West NA Price Conference in October and again at the CHD conference last month. I think you'll be as delighted as I was to learn about her important work and how it can benefit you and your loved ones, listeners. Now, I know Bob already knows about this work, so this is going to be interesting. So a little about Liz. After 33 years in traditional pharmacy work, Liz walked away from her 6-figure job in 2020 after struggling with the idea of administering genetically modified injections, that is, COVID shots. She had done her research and recalled her pharmacist's oath to do no harm. She later went on to found Blessed by His Blood, a member-owned cooperative that connects like-minded donors and recipients who desire mRNA tech-free blood or blood products. For more than a decade, she's also worked as a health coach, helping people navigate or disengage themselves from the medical system, especially those seeking alternatives to conventional care. She's also the author of 2 books, volumes 1 and 2 of Becoming Your Own Health Detective, Helpful Hints for Finding Answers, which you can find on her website, goodmedicine.info, and Amazon. Liz brings a mix of medical background, personal conviction about informed consent and medical autonomy, and holistic health advocacy to her leadership of, I'm going to call it BBHB. So she fits in great around here, and welcome to Informed Life Radio, Liz James.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And Bob, it's good to see you. I'm really grateful to be here and be able to share our BBHB mission tonight. We've got a lot to cover.
Yes, there is a lot. And as I researched, even after having met and spoken with you and one of your other board members, I found even more. So you're right. Well, fill in the rest of the story, how you came to create BBHB after you left your pharmacist career.
So it is a pretty interesting story. And if you had told me in 2019 that I would be doing this, I would be like, you got the wrong person. It's not, I don't think I'm the one who would be doing that. So I have been holistically minded about starting about 10 years into my pharmacy practice. I had my own health situation that required, well, it didn't require it. I either had a choice of going the traditional pharmacy route or going the holistic route. And that's where I started. And really my story started with raw milk, which is where the West NA Price comes in, because that was 25 years ago. And that's like literally I found out about West NA Price just barely after they had launched officially, I think. So, but even though I was behind the counter as a pharmacist, my personal life had already started changing into a more holistic minded situation. And by about I'm going to say 2008 or 2010, I had already decided that vaccines were not what they were purported to be in pharmacy school. And so that was something that I was already aware of. Well, fast forward, when 2019, 2020 happened, it was easy for me to find the research that I was looking for. And I knew in my soul that there was no way that I was going to be able to participate in that. I didn't know what that was going to look like, if I was going to be asking for a religious exemption from um, actually doing the injections, or what that was going to look like. Um, and I was kind of wrestling with that. And then on September 9th of 2020, I was driving home from work, and they had already, they had started prepping us with, this is how we're going to handle the vials and all the things. But I was driving home from work, and I was about 20 minutes from home, and just out of the blue, clear as day, God just said, "You're out." And it was like, it wasn't an audible in my truck, but it was so profound in my head. It was an absolute, and not negotiable. And I didn't want to negotiate. I mean, it was at that time when I was like, I went to my knees mentally, and I was like, I understand, and I'm ready. And so I got home, and I didn't quite know how to talk to my husband about, how do you say, like, I think God just talked to me and he's asking me to quit my job. And I don't have anything else lined up. This is it. And so I said to him, as we were folding clothes, I said, I'm getting really uncomfortable with what's about to be asked of me at work. And Charlie didn't say anything for a few minutes. And then he said, well, then you need to quit and we'll figure it out. And that was the affirmation, that without, like, he didn't even question it. And, for walking away from a 6-figure salary without having like an idea of what I was going to do, was definitely an act of faith for both of us. But I really thought what I was going to do is just jump into, leading people out of like pharmacy Babylon, right? Like helping them come out and learn that there are so many other things that you can use and do and incorporate into your life that can help keep you out of having to have a pharmacy existence or a pharmaceutical existence. And so that's what I just like rolled into that full barrel. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Because 2 weeks after God said that, I was unemployed. And I did that. And in January of 21, I had my quiet time in the morning, and the Lord just said out of the blue very clearly, he said, if you have no country, you'll have no business. And I was like, okay, what should I be doing with that? Because, here I was trying to start a business, and he made that very clear. So, by the end of the day, I had enrolled in a Constitution class. And because I was like, I hadn't had a Constitution class since probably 8th grade. And so I took a Constitution class that was several weeks long. And then I ended up taking the Biblical Citizenship class through Patriot Academy. And then I ended up teaching Biblical Citizenship for several semesters as a volunteer through Patriot Academy. And during that time, I found out that when I taught my very first class, we were talking about precinct chairs. And I found out that the precinct that I lived in didn't have a precinct chair and had never had a precinct chair. And a lot of people don't know what ever. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, I hear you. So I stepped in and became a precinct chair, not knowing or understanding that God was prepping me in this way, not just for, being a better citizen, but also for what he had in store for us legislatively for BBHB. nor, I mean, because I didn't even, BBHB wasn't even on the radar right now for this. And then in May of 21, so we're like 9 months into me having quit my job, and my life is quite full now. In May of 21, in the morning again, and I have quiet time almost every morning, he said very clearly, he out of the blue, he said, I need for you to preserve the blood. And I said, God, I know what you're saying. I said, I have quit my job because I believe that our blood should be as it is. I've been kicked off of Twitter. I've done all of these things. And, I've been very vocal about trying to help people preserve their blood. And I said, I'm here for the person that's going to do this. And so for 5 months, I was looking everywhere for the person that was going to do this. And like I was on the media. I was looking behind the scenes. I was thinking, I was like, there is going to be a big name person that is going to do this. And I am going to be there for them. And I will be their staunchest supporter, because I know this is what God wants for me. And then in September, almost a year to the day, God and I are having this conversation. I'm really frustrated because here it is 5 months later. He said, I need for you to preserve the blood. I'm looking for the person to preserve the blood. And so I tell God, I was like, why is nobody doing this? And he said, because you're not. And it was very humbling. And it was a reprimand. And I felt it. I mean, I felt it to my core. And, like there was a disappointment that I'd wasted this much time. And so I continuing the conversation, I was like, I do not know why you chose me. I'm like, I don't know anything about blood other than what I've learned in pharmacy school. I'm not like, I don't have any fortune for certain, because we're living off of much less income. I have, like I said, I've been kicked off Twitter. I have no following. I don't have the face for this. I am a nobody. And he said, that's exactly why I chose you, because if it had been somebody who had any of those things, it would have, the mission would have turned into about them as opposed to why you're going to be doing this. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And we got off of our conversation. And later that day, I reached out to a group of friends that we had an active chat. There was about 250 people on this active chat. And I said, you guys, I'm going to embark on something. I don't know what it's going to look like. Here's what I'm going to do. And the Lord has asked me to do this. Would anybody like to help me? And out of that group of about 250 people, there were 7 people that stepped forward. And those were my original board members. And they're all, with the exception of one, and I've got another one that's about to have to step down to for health reasons. But those people, those precious people, are the ones who step forward as blind, like I was blind to what this was going to look like. They were even more blind to what this was going to look like. And they have been the most amazing team members that I couldn't have picked better members. I mean, God could have given me like 7 accountants, or something like that, where we need one accountant, right? But he didn't. He gave everybody each of us have a different skill set that just pairs beautifully with everything else. So, but from that point, after I got an agreement from these 7, where they're like, all right, what are we going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what this is going to look like yet. I'm trying to figure this out, and I'm hoping God will at least throw me a bone or something. So from September to November, there wasn't anything. Well, I was at the Weston A. Price conference in November of 22. And on the second day, I was late getting there because of traffic. And I walked in. I didn't want to interrupt the session. And so I went and was walking around in the exhibitors hall. And I stopped and spoke to one lady that was there. And when I was talking to her, we were talking about health stuff, obviously. But all of a sudden, God just started dropping stuff. Like, he's like, you're going to be a cooperative. You're not going to be a 501c3. You're going to be based out of Minnesota, not Texas, where I live. And I was like, I don't even know anybody in Minnesota. Well, I mean, like, the next person I met was from Minnesota, and they were able to answer a lot of questions, because I was like, why Minnesota? Why a cooperative? Why all these things? And, the cooperative is fairly easy to explain, because, we want every member is a member owner. I mean, like, when we step forward in the spring and we have our annual members meeting, which will be our third annual members meeting, we're going to have, and you're hearing it here first, Bob. There's going to be, we're going to ask for people to run for office, because we need another board member, and I know the Lord will bring us the right person, just like he did with Peter when he brought Peter to us. But so we're not to be a 501c3, because that minimized government interference. And at the time, that was a big problem. And I would still believe it probably still is a big problem. So we're out of that sphere, working as a cooperative instead. Well, Minnesota, it has, as many problems as Minnesota has, they have some very strong protective laws for cooperatives, the strongest in the nation. And the other thing that Minnesota has is they have some very strong laws for natural health. So that's why Minnesota came to pass. And these laws have been in the books for years. In fact, from what I understand, Minnesota at one time was the leader in natural and alternative health options. But I didn't know any of that before. I'd never even been to Minnesota.
Right. Wow.
So
I didn't know that part of the story about the Minnesota. That's incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, it took us about 18 months to set up. Because we have had to be very conscientious and very careful about which platforms we use for fear of being shut down. And we didn't want to build something, number one, that could be easily shut down. And we didn't want to build something that could be easily hacked. So we searched long, hard, and wide for a company that we could work with that would be protective of the information that we have. And that took a long time to find somebody. I will say that.
What does that company do that you're working with?
So the company that we have, they built the platform that we use, like, from the ground up for us. This is not something that even existed. And it is highly encrypted, and which makes it a lot safer than if it was just something that we had, pulled off the shelf, something that was pre-existing. So it's because we don't have, because of the medical information we potentially have on the website, we wanted to make sure that it remained very safe. So,
okay. So is the website the means that applicants use to apply? And tell me about that process.
So the website, and the website is kind of our front cover, and that's Blessed by His Blood, or www.blessedbyhisblood.com. But once somebody is a member, we have a member portal that takes them to a completely different website run by a company that's behind the scenes. So you can't, I know that's, I don't know how else to say that. It's not something you can access it from the website itself, but until you're a member, you can't access your own portal with the second company. It's a kind of a layered. I'm not techie, so I'm probably not the best one to explain all this. You probably need our logistics coordinator, who's also our board member, Jasmine, to talk about that, or Larry, our CIO. But anyway.
Well, Liz, maybe this is the time to tell us, how do people become members?
Okay. So you can become a member a couple of different ways. It all ends up funneling in the same place. Just going to www.blessedbyhisblood.com and hitting the apply button. It's just a red button at the top. And then to be a member, because we are 100% volunteer, it's $25 a year to be a member for adults, and children under 18 are free, as are adult children with disabilities that will be living at home. They're also free. Every member has an individual link. And so this is another layer that we have. So I've got a link, and Bob has a link, and every single member has a referral link. And we can always go back and say, as we're tracking people, we can trace the links where they've come from. When somebody applies for membership, there is an application, and we do ask some questions, just like Red Cross would ask questions. Our questions are a little more in detail, because we care about more things than Red Cross cares about. Right. And so you will see those questions in the intake form. Then from there, the last thing is there is a covenant that the applicant signs, and that is a covenant between themselves and God. The problem is there's not a scalable test to test for mRNA. So when we get that question a lot, is like, well, yeah. So we have to rely on, we know people, like in the last 5 years, we all know who our people are. And as we grow and expand, that's why Bob has his own member number. I have my own member number. If I'm going to give that member number to somebody, that's under the assumption that I'm either working in a very safe environment like Weston A. Price or Children's Health Defense, someplace like that. Or I've met somebody, or I know somebody, and we've had so much in common that that information was volunteered somewhere in conversation, right?
Yeah,
and then
what we're talking about for the radio listeners, I think it might be harder to follow if you're just listening, but I think explain a little about, we're talking about mRNA spike protein free blood. Right?
That is correct. That's correct. We're modeled after John 15:13, which is no man that has greater love than to give his life for his friend. And what we do as a cooperative is we literally look out for one another, and in the need of a blood transfusion, we work as a cooperative, and we have a case manager that does this. Our member would call us or email us or text us indicating that they are going to need blood. We walk them through that process as we're walking them through the process, because a lot of doctors don't even know about how to write an order for direct donor blood. And direct donor blood does require a medical order. I mean, any blood does, like even a blood order in general. But with directed donor blood, you don't want to create a toxic environment by asking for the wrong thing. You don't want to walk into the doctor's office or hospital and say, I want COVID jab-free blood. I want unvaccinated blood. That you can create a hostile environment pretty quickly. And unfortunately, we've had situations where parents have done that as their children are coming in needing blood, and CPS has been called. So, and that's happened. I'm going to say at least 3 times, perhaps even more. Kim may be aware of more instances than that. So we know it happens. And that's why it's so very important not to create a hostile environment when you go in and ask. And there's lots and lots of reasons to want directed donor blood. I mean, this isn't just about the COVID shot anymore, because as we have learned more and more, blood in itself is inherently risky. I mean, if you need a transfusion, that should be a last resort. Because, I mean, things can travel into your body in a blood transfusion. Blood is only tested for 12 things. All right. And there's a lot more than 12 things that can ride in on a blood product. But the other thing is, blood is a tissue, and the longer it sits in a bag, I mean, tissue degrades. It's no longer living, in the sense of it's not being oxygenated continually, that there's not cells, that are being overturned and new cells coming out. You're dealing with something that is degrading. And the technical term for that is storage lesion. And that is as it sounds. And so the older the bag of blood is, the greater the storage lesion to that bag of blood. And that storage lesion can cause problems when you receive that blood. And in an anonymous donor blood situation, you are getting the oldest blood on the shelf that matches you, because they have to get rid of it, just like milk at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
And if they
you can't
don't,
test the fresh stuff either. That sounds like.
well, no, because you're going to they got to move the oldest stuff.
Last in, first out.
Yeah,
First
that's
in,
exactly.
first out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when we started understanding this aspect of it, we're like, this makes so much sense, because as you're getting, the older the blood is, the greater the risk of blood clots, the greater the risk of multiple organ dysfunction, the greater the risk of increased hospital stay time for other reasons. There's many other reasons of things that could happen, not to mention acquiring something that you didn't necessarily plan on acquiring from a contaminated product. And interestingly enough, their Red Cross has a couple of advertisements out there about, oh gosh, and I think it was in October of 23, they expanded their intake of blood to where it's now men who have sex with men can donate blood, which was not the thing prior to that because of the HIV, but now they're allowing that. The other thing that's rather concerning is if you are a transgender and you mark your gender, they have to go by what you mark on your form. That can be problematic, because there are times when it is a female child must have, we'll just say they must have male blood or female blood that's never been pregnant before.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
Yeah,
I had no idea of that.
Yeah, and so, but if you have somebody who is not honest with their sex, their birth sex,
the biologic sex,
then that can actually cause some problems for the person whose bag they're receiving, So there's a lot to this, and anybody that needs blood should want directed donor blood. I mean, no matter who you are, you should want it.
Are you finding roadblocks? I mean, I know the answer to this, but is it just pretty easy to just say, hey, I want to just have autologous blood, self-donated, or direct donor blood, and it's a pretty smooth sailing from there?
So that is a loaded question, and the short answer is it can be very difficult, or it can be very easy, depending on what kind of prep work you've done. Like, do you know your doctor, first of all? Is your doctor willing to write the order? I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the code of ethics in medically, keeping the patient comfortable emotionally is considered, or it used to be considered, a top priority, and as is patients' religious or personal preferences, right? But unfortunately, there are doctors out there who won't write the order. Thankfully, most of our members are starting, if they haven't already, they're finding doctors who, not just for transfusions, but for everything, who are willing to work with them in alternative ways. So that's good. But here's the bigger problem. The blood industry itself, and make no mistake about this, the blood industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And they are very much now against direct donor blood asks. And so this is our David and Goliath fight at this point, because they would very much like to turn all of this off. And I will give a case in point. In North Texas, which is where I live, we have a blood company called Carter Blood Care, and they are a quote unquote 501c3. Their CEO makes over $1 million a year. Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Good work if you can get it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was interesting because the Lord sent me in January of 23. He sent me, he said, I need for you to protect the blood. That was the directive. And so I went to Austin and started that. I understood the assignment. And thankfully, because I had been a precinct chair for about 1.5 years, and I had learned quite a bit through that journey, I kind of knew who to talk to first, and was starting to learn the process, because it is a very confusing process. I mean, this is not for the faint of heart.
The legislative process.
Yes. Yeah.
So first you received a calling to preserve the blood, and then later it was protect as well.
Right. And so that happened at the end of January. I went to the Capitol at the beginning of February. And in April, Carter Blood Center, which is the largest blood donation center in North Texas, they made a public statement, and they said they were no longer honoring directed donors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, understand that they serve over 250 hospitals and transfusion centers in North Texas. They are not small. And what we have now is for Carter served areas, we first have to find out if they have a secondary contract with Red Cross or another blood center, because if they do, then we can use that hospital. But if they don't, if Carter's the solo contract, then even if the doctor writes the order will not be honored by Carter. And this is where there is, I believe legally, somehow, some way, we have a corporate entity making a blanket medical decision on something they should not have control over. They shouldn't be able to say across the board blanket, well, it doesn't make economic sense for us to do this anymore, so we're just not going to do it, despite the fact that the doctor is the one that has the medical relationship with the patient, and the doctor is writing the order because they believe that's best for the patient. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. And in Texas, we have a family, and what I'm about to share is not it's family information, but they've testified in the House and the Senate, so it's not private information.
Is this testimony on your website, Liz? I did see some from you and some from a family that maybe is the one you're going to bring up now.
Yep, the Lair family in Texas. They have 2 daughters that have beta thalassemia major. And these beta thalassemia major, basically your body does not produce hemoglobin. And these 2 girls require blood transfusions every single month if they are to live. As it turns out, I'm a match for one of the girls. And so their hematologist said early on that both of these girls would be much, much healthier if they could find a group of donors and have consistent directed donations from this group of donors,
As
and
opposed to just
as
randomized.
opposed to
Okay.
random, because the more often you get a blood donation, the greater the risk of a reaction to the blood donation. That's
The
less
risk
likely.
increases over.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it increases. And so for 9 years, these kids were getting directed donor blood. Their parents went out and found donors that were willing. As it turns out, I mean, their hematologist wrote a letter explaining why the importance of this. Now, I don't know, but a hematologist probably knows blood better than almost anybody. That's what I would think.
And
And
who was the letter directed to?
it was directed to the blood bank.
Okay. Who was
Because
refusing this
right.
direct donation? Okay.
He wrote a letter to the blood bank explaining how important this was, and Carter said they did not care.
So what do you make of that? Why they're claiming that it's just too expensive for them to bother with getting this bag to this person
Well,
rather than just
yeah,
randomly handing them out?
it's very curious because we're not sure exactly where. I can tell you what they're saying versus what I think.
Mm-hmm.
What they're saying is it's logistically hard, and it takes a lot of extra man hours to make sure that the right blood goes to the right place. All blood comes with a barcode on it. Barcodes are incredibly easy to track, and we have a handful of former blood bank employees from all over the United States that are coming to us, and we're using them in an advisory capacity.
Oh, nice.
And we have not had one say yet that it stretched resources manpower wise. So they're like, it doesn't stretch resources. It just means that the bag is stored in a different location in the refrigerator. I mean, but still barcode wise, I've worked in enough pharmacies in my lifetime. You scan something and it's like shelf 3, row 4. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's no big deal. You don't have to go through things to look for it. What I believe is happening is the United States supplies 70% of the world's blood supply, blood products. That's a fact. That's a fact, and you can look this up in commodity reports. But the other,
Commodity is the key word.
yeah, it is a commodity. It's a commodity, and the other thing is it's not just overseas. On average, only about 20% of blood that's collected actually stays in the community it was collected in. The other 80% gets either sold overseas, just like I've talked about, or it gets sold to big pharma, or it gets sold for research. Now,
Wait, sold?
sold.
People give that blood for free.
Exactly, Bob. Exactly. So when it goes to the hospitals or the transfusion centers, there's contract pricing. When it goes to the pharmacy or research center or overseas, it is basically it as a commodity, it goes to the highest bidder. You see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am donating to you, Bob, and my bag of blood has a barcode that's assigned to you, even though my bag of blood is going to go through exactly the same testing that an anonymous bag would go through, when they're testing it, they're like, oh wow, she's got this this set of antigens and she's unvaccinated and whatever. They're like, we could make more money by selling it to company XYZ than we could to make our $700 contract pricing to the hospital.
Oh boy. So
So
highest bidder.
so you see where that goes. And as a pharmacist, I spent part of my career for 12 years. I worked in a facility where we specialized in rare diseases, oncology, and fertility, and some other things that are just like very uncommon. And we would call, I'll use IVIG as an example. we would call every week and ask what the price was for IVIG that week. And it could be like,
tell us what that is, Liz.
And it's an immunoglobulin that's used in autoimmune disorders. And it was so interesting because some weeks it'd be like, oh, it's $1,200 this week. It's $2,200 this week. It's $3,000 this week. It's back to $1,100 this week. And so it literally supply and demand all the way.
Are they traded on the futures exchange in Chicago?
No, I don't think so.
Futures? I'm just being somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of that. Yeah, with the price fluctuation.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is the blood industry is a very secretive industry. They do not want people talking about the blood industry. They do not want people touring whatever's going on behind. They don't want anything. But I'm gonna take this a step further. In 1998, 1999, there was a new class of pharmacological products that entered the market, and that's called the biologics. And to a degree, the biologics were already around in the form of IVIG, that kind of thing. But what they brought in were things like basically almost every advertisement on the TV that you see now. Mm-hmm. I would say there's at least a 50-50 chance if it's a pharmaceutical that it's a biologic. It is the fastest growing class of pharmaceuticals in the pharmaceutical industry. And it's fast growing because they're using it almost as first line for anybody with an autoimmune disorder or cancer or irregular situation going on. I mean, everything from Crohn's to RA to everything, lupus, everything. Anyway.
So correct me if I'm wrong then. What you're saying, I think, is these are human blood products that are being, our blood donations are basically being derived into these other monoclonal antibodies and other products we've heard about recently.
Okay, so that's where we're going with this. Now, not every biologic is made from human cells. Some of them are made from like hamster cells and other things too. But for the sake of this conversation, we're just going to talk about the 10 to 20% of the biologics that are made from human-derived cells. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too is that it's not just like my blood going into one person's biologic. It's not a one-to-one like that. It's like if they're using plasma or whatever it is that they're using, it goes into a vat of like-minded stuff. And so if you needed one of these biologics that was human cell derived, you're getting a soup. You're not getting me. I'm in there somewhere, but you're getting a soup of 1,000 or 2,000 or however many people.
And do I understand correctly too that biologics have a lesser regulatory burden to meet prior to approval by FDA? Or maybe that's too much of a blanket statement.
That may be a little bit too much of a blanket statement, but I do believe that a lot of them have been fast-tracked. And we all know how that usually ends up. But these biologics, literally on the low end, run the consumer or their insurance about $30,000 a year. On the high end, they're over $1 million a year. And so they're the biggest money maker. In addition to being the fastest growing class, they're the biggest money maker as well. And that is, again, when you go back to saying, okay, well, if they have contract pricing versus to the highest bidder, that's the reason financially that they aren't going to want this, because they want full control of the blood supply. They don't want somebody's really special blood that they could be making extra money on to be kept in the community for an
It's
individual.
the same old story, isn't it?
It's the same story. That's exactly right.
There's a couple of things I wish we had longer, but there's a couple of things I want to talk about before our time is up, and that is how it works for the members from joining to declaring their injection status to matching donors and recipients. And then the other thing is a little bit to tell us about your legislative activity, and it kind of ties together with what you were just talking about. Is some of the,
So
seller's refusal to honor the directed donor.
Okay, so the first question was what again?
Tell us how the membership experience works for BBHB from joining to matching donors and recipients step by step.
Yeah, what if we have a need? What if I have a need tomorrow?
So if you had a need tomorrow, you would either text or email our information, and we would open up a case. At that time, you would get a call from Kim, our case manager, pretty quickly, and she would find out, first of all, if you even talked to your doctor about asking about directed donors. If you had not, we would walk you through that. So again, you don't create a toxic environment. And in the meantime, we also find out which hospital you're going to be using. And then we will refer back to, we have like a friend and foe list, and that's constantly growing and changing, so that we know if we're like, all right, we know up front we're dealing with a contentious hospital or a hospital that maybe has a contentious blood bank, so that we can provide that information to you and say, okay, here's your problem. Are you willing to move, or are you willing to try something different? Because we may not be able to help you if you're in that kind of a situation. The other thing that we will do is a lot of times you can prolong or avoid a blood transfusion. There's something called the Jehovah's Witness protocol, and that is extremely successful in many cases. In fact, research has shown that the outcome of Jehovah's Witness protocol versus receiving a blood transfusion is almost identical in terms of outcome.
Is that fluids?
It can be fluids, but it's also other things like erythropoietin or tranexamic acid. It really depends on the individual, like what was the reason for the need of the transfusion. Is it, if it's a sheer volume thing, like if you've bled out, you might be able to help a little bit with fluid replacement and an iron infusion, but it's just, there's a lot of moving parts here. And so it's not going to be the same for everybody. Just know that there is a Jehovah's Witness protocol, and most hospitals should have that and be very well aware of it. And you can claim that. They can't question that. So,
very good to know.
There's also something, if you're in a situation where they flat out won't do it, and you're about to have surgery where they're saying you're going to need blood, there's something called cell saver technology. And in that situation, as you're bleeding in your major surgery, if there is a perfusionist on standby, they can collect that blood and then run it back through it's kind of like a dialysis machine where they clean the blood and then put it right back in you again. And that's actually the safest way to go, because it's your own blood. And there are even they call them blood-free hospitals. There's one up in Ohio, and there's a few scattered around the United States, and they actively use a lot of perfusion and cell saver technology is how they do that and the Jehovah's Witness protocol. So we encourage that whenever there's a situation, and we'll walk people through it. We're heavily about information. Anyway, if we can help you at that time, and your hospital and the blood center will work with us, then at that time we start calling our members who we've identified as a match, and we start just checking in with them and saying, hey, we've got a member need in your area. Are you in a position where you might be able to donate, given the time frame? And then when that happens, if everything goes well, which we've had great success with, then the donors go in, they donate, knowing the name of the person or their ID number for the hospital. And the blood center is already aware that they're coming in at that point. And the donation happens. And then if the member, the recipient member and the donor member would like to exchange emails at that time, then we allow that. And we've had some really just beautiful interactions between fellow members who have helped one another out. I mean, it's like it will bring you to tears sometimes. So
yeah, that's good. That's the human side of things too. That's lovely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Bob, you as a member, have you been contacted in the past to kind of be on standby for donation?
I was contacted once about a year and a half ago. I think it's early on. I think as you were just launching everything, and it was in the Portland, Oregon area, and I was on call. But it turns out they were lucky enough to find a family member available finally.
Well, you never know. I mean, like with the Lair family, because it's not just an O positive match for me. It's an antigen match, and it's a 9 antigen match. And so as it turns out, I was a match for one of the Lair girls. And so now I've been entered into that routine for her. And surprisingly, I mean, like, and again, God is so good. My husband is also an identical match to her as well. And so
Wow.
we're both in the mix now to donate for her on a regular basis.
Yeah, we've got just a couple minutes left, Lisa. Were there other questions or another topic?
Well, I guess people please check out the website that is blessedbyhisblood.com. And also, Liz, tell us quickly about the offer you have for people who enter a special.
If you will, if you decide to become a member, in the comments section, if you will just write, I heard about you on Informed Life Radio, and then we are going to give somebody a T-shirt that says "Designed by God, no genetic modification not required." I don't know if you can see that. There you go. You can pick the color and the size and all the things, but we will pick randomly over the next few weeks a winner for that, and we'll reach out to you and get you a T-shirt so you can rep our community.
That's great.
I got an online question. I don't know about hematochromatosis. So that's somebody who has a lot of iron, and we can take those donors. Okay, good. Well, that's one person who commented, and we'll see if we get any more invites.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Bob. Well, I guess we didn't get to go over your legislative efforts, but please do check out the website. Yeah.
Let me just say real fast, there's we're working with 15 states.
Oh, very good. To require that direct donation be permitted.
Protect.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you, Liz James. Thank you to Bob Runnels, and thanks to our wonderful producer, Nathan Miller. Thank you, listener, for tuning into Informed Life Radio on 1150 AM KKNW and CHD TV. This is your guest host, Lisa Templeton, signing off for the week. Thank you all.